New set spoilers, a cryptic message from Scarlatch, and some Tuesday Night Eternal results. Let's go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to FECast, the official podcast of Friends of Eternal. Welcome back. It's been a while since our last cast. I am your host, Sunyveil, and joined with me today is fellow Worlds competitor Stormblessed. How have you been doing this January?
I've been doing good. It's been a busy January. It turns out 2021 was as exciting as predicted in the rest of the world, and has been very eventful in my personal life. Just a lot going on personally. I know Sunny has also had a busy time in his personal life as well.
Yeah, geez. I mean, I could spend an entire podcast talking about how much I've been working at work, I guess. But no one wants to hear that. People want to hear about what we think about the new cards or something. I don't know. Well, I actually don't know what people want to hear because we get so little feedback. But I assume that people want to hear us talk about the new cards. So we'll definitely be doing that. But first, we have some Tuesday Night Eternal to get you caught up on the results and what's been going on during that tournament series. And we have a cryptic message from Scarlatch with 2 words, and all it says is news soon in response to a Reddit post. So we'll speculate on that toward the end of the episode. Let's start off with Tuesday Night Eternal. It's been going strong, roughly 1 tournament a week. We have 3 results since our last cast. Doc 28 won number 6, the Winter Showdown number 6. Is that what it's called?
Winter Challenge.
Yeah, Challenge. There we go. With Krull Elysian. Looks like the Elysian deck with some Krulls in there that you can know when to hold them in order to put into play some of your powerful 2-drops. We have Prakalakin winning tournament number 7 with a Xenon pile. I presume based on the title that this is made by Spifferific in Expedition. And finally, in challenge number 8, we have Saris winning with a Genitor Dovid deck. Now, Genitor Dovid, a new card since we last talked. This one's pretty crazy. Do you want to read out the text for this one?
Sure. Yeah, Genetor Dovid, or as Saris has titled the deck and its new nickname for now and forevermore is Janitor David. So Janitor David is a 2 Justice Primal for a 4/4 Cleric, notably, not a soldier. And it has summon. Draw a soldier or card with Amplify from the top 4 cards of your deck, then bottom the rest. And for its powerful, being a 2-cost 4/4 that summons draws a card, it has Entomb. The enemy player plays 2 2/1 soldiers, then you stun them. So an incredibly powerful and unique card, being an oversetted 2-drop that draws you a card while having an Entomb that gives your opponent's unit. So it's something we really haven't seen before in a unique capacity, enforcing some deck building along the lines of soldiers and Amplify.
Yeah, definitely. You casted the tournament where Saris won. Did you get to see a lot of Dovid in action, and what did it look like?
Oh yeah, in Expedition, Dovid is the bomb diggity. Dovid was, reigned supreme. Now, interestingly, the Peru Soldiers deck was obviously the popular deck playing Janitor David, but it got 1st, 2nd, 5th, 13th, 15th, and 17th. And I believe it got maybe 11th as well. So it kind of ran the whole gamut as positions along, what place everyone got. Some people did really well with the deck, some people did less well with the deck, which really shows that there's a lot of ways to build the deck, and that maybe it's a more skill testing deck, or maybe it's a very high rolling deck, which wouldn't necessarily surprise me because the Janitor David himself is perhaps lends itself to lots of high swings, because either you play it and you draw like a soldier or a combat trick, and you just sort of overwhelm your enemy with some board presence and card advantage, or the opponent maybe kills it right off the bat, and then they kill you with a bunch of extra 2/1 soldiers they can take advantage of.
Yeah, it gets some of the most powerful cards from Empire of Glass, right? Builder's Decree is a card that I always said was like, this card is the real deal. And it also gets Martial Efficiency, which basically reads, you win combat this turn.
Yeah, it gets what is thought of as one of maybe the 5 best cards in Eternal. It also grabs Maveloth Huntress for free. So, and if you really want to, you can try building a deck with, say, like Vicious Overgrowth is just sort of a generic removal spell. There's a lot of different ways to build the deck. one of the more interesting things, as I was sitting speculating, is some sort of putting it in the Amplify combo deck and turning that into like a 4-faction combo deck, as this is just being another way to dig deeper while help stabilizing you versus early aggression, which I could possibly see because, one of the weaknesses of the deck is both digging and maintaining a high life total. And this might help you with both sides. So maybe that's the way to try it out in the future. I don't know.
That seems a bit far for me. I guess like it might just be good enough on rate that it's good enough in a deck that's trying to win with spells as a unit. I was looking back at my message history, and I think my reaction to this card was, "What is this promo?" Because I thought it was so ridiculous.
Yeah, this card is ridiculous in many ways. It does require approximately 24-ish hits. So if you have about 24 hits in your deck, which is say 6 cards at 4x, or various other options, such as Sarah's deck is only playing like a 2 of Builder's Decree, for example. But let's just simplify. If you play 6 copies at 4x each, you will have approximately an 80% chance to draw a card off Dovid. So I don't think you really want to go below 23-ish cards, because once you drop below, too far below 80%, the card gets a lot less effective, right? Like, you don't want this card to only draw you a card 50% of the time, because if this card doesn't draw you a card and your opponent just kills it, that can be really damaging. We'll get to that in a second, but the card is very powerful, but it does require a massive deck building constraint. Now, as I said, the card is not a soldier itself, so it can't draw itself, sadly. Otherwise, that would probably be way too good.
Yeah, they don't need to make it better in that way.
It feels a lot like Flip, though, doesn't it? It's a card that gives you card advantage and puts 4 worth of body on the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's very similar in, like, what the heck are they doing with this card? I'm thinking back to I guess it was mostly just a limited card, but a card from Ixalan and Magic the Gathering, and it's a 2-cost 4/3 that has a worse drawback and no further upside. And like, just the comparison is ridiculous. Like, you get so much more for your investment on this card, and the downside like doesn't even seem that bad. All you need is like a 1/3, and then those 2 1s are at the very least stonewalled. It doesn't come back to start killing you. So I think this card might just be good enough, even if you only have a few hits. Like, I don't think you need to draw a card that often in order for this card to be actually just good enough.
I think it's kind of crazy that this card, the Entomb, doesn't just give them soldiers. You also get to stun them.
Yeah, I don't. What the heck is up with that?
It's just silly because soldiers already has interaction with stun capabilities. For example, Frostclaw Rider. If it dies, your Frostclaw Rider gets to be a 4-cost unit right off the bat. You can also play Tactical Superiority. If you're playing a bunch of soldiers, you might want to draw some cards. You can just sometimes null the downside of David by drawing 2 cards and just incidentally killing the units. It's just kind of funny that it stuns them too. Like, did it really need to stun them as well?
Yeah. Do you think that this is going to get the Friends in Low Places treatment? I feel like it almost certainly has to.
It is less good than Friends in Low Places by like a long shot.
Oh, okay, that's true. Yes.
Friends in Low Places was absolutely ridiculous. The fact that it put, the 4-cost Telu before it was even nerfed into play with Aegis, you put Aegis into play with Aegis and it becomes a 6/6 right off the bat on your opponent's turn was ridiculous. Like, this card is very much comparable to Flip in many ways, but it is not Flip. Flip was obscenely good.
Okay, but I did not say, is this Friends in Low Places? I said, is it going to get that treatment? And I think it is. I think, like, the soldiers are not going to be stunned, or it's going to be like a 3/4 or 4/3, I think.
If it does, I think it would be because of Expedition. I think in Throne, it's a lot less good than an Expedition, because Throne has cards like Defiance, and it has different archetypes that are worse into the Genitor. We'll see. I mean, we haven't seen, Speaking Circle getting touched yet, but we'll get back to that in a second later when we talk about the new cards.
Yeah.
So the other big tournament news was the 3v3 team showcase happened today as the time of this recording. It happened just a couple hours ago, and I was fortunate enough to be the co-host for the final the final
match,
I guess. Sure, I guess the final match. I don't know. I think of a different word, but I can't think of it. It's fine. So the 3v3 team showcase, for those of you who don't know, was Jose Eternal putting on a sort of exhibition sequence series of matches. Not expedition, exhibition. And it was Team Unified Throne, where power could be shared. So what that effectively means is that every team that was participating had to bring 3 players and 3 different decks, and no 2 decks could share the same card aside from power cards. So no two decks could play Crawl, no two decks could play Maveloft Huntress, no two decks could play Petition. So in a sense, you're forcing deck diversity while also forcing players to build the best decks they can without any overlapping cards. You have to decide where you're going to divide your cards, what decks you're going to bring to maximize the best cards in the format. So we saw some tension there where I believe it was Team Misplay or Team Eternal Journey, I'm not sure which one, but one of the teams brought both Elysian and Hurukira, and what that meant is that only one of those, in this case Elysian, was able to actually play Maveloft Huntress. So the Hurukira list was left a little bit gimped slightly because it couldn't play one of its best cards.
Yeah, that does seem like a big deal. It's great to see this. Thank you so much for Telemokos for putting this on. Just anything that encourages people in the Eternal community or teams to work with each other. Like we don't have a team league. It would be difficult to set up. It would be super awesome. But just like making teams mean something, I know that like Darkest Hour and myself have said that like being on a team isn't necessarily the biggest contributor to success. Like it's not something that you absolutely need for success, but like it's fun, you know? People like their teams. People really like hanging out with the people they hang out with and chatting with them and sharing success. So a team league is like the greatest thing for that. And I certainly hope that we see more opportunities for teams to band together in the future.
Yeah, it was great fun, and there were some really good matches and some really interesting decks because, again, you force that deck diversity, right? So, only one team brought Hurukira and Elysian. I believe every team brought one of those two decks.
Yeah, makes sense.
That is just a staple, right? Like, I think Elysian's probably the best deck in Eternal right now, and I don't think it's even that close. I think it's one of the hardest decks to play, but, that's why it doesn't have that much of a presence on ladder, but I do think it is the best. But yeah, so like we saw the full game of decks. One team got off to an early 2-0 lead and then ended up getting swept 6 coming back off that. Another team dominated with a clean sweep, only dropping a single game, not even a match. And then the match that I was pleasantly able to be the caster for went all the way to the final match in the final game 3. And there was some great moments and some nail-biting action and some quite good commentary, if I do say so myself.
I know you're just being modest, but it was TBC's Stormblessed team that did the clean sweep. Who was on your crew? I assume it was you, Collector, and Gallop. No.
So it was actually some of our newer members and some of our lesser known members. So it was our newer members. We have the Overmaster and Mail, and we had longtime member but less known member Frafa doing the 6-0 sweep.
All right. Well, I obviously missed the action, but definitely happy that it happened.
Oh, just mention one of the interesting things that happened is that I don't remember which I think it was Frafa. Frafa brought a destruction tokens list, shrine. I think it was actually a Trove deck. Praxis Trove, the card that said when you play a 1-drop, you play a 1-cost spell and you tick it up by 1.
Oh yeah, that one's fun.
Yeah, so that was a very interesting deck that Frafa brought. And the opponent was playing the Janitor Dovid himself, and there was a massive downside in that match because, Frafa would combust the Janitor and then get 2 free tokens that both had massive synergy with being sacrificed and also just had other synergy with Shrine to Carve It, just making them into, 4/1s with lifesteal.
Yeah, Genitor seems pretty bad at Shrine.
Yeah, so that was enjoyable. And then of course there were some really good games that I was able to cast in the Eternal Titans versus Misplay match. And it was very fun to see just all these different decks and these great players heading up against each other.
So speaking of Team Eternal, this isn't really a new announcement, but I mentioned it previously, and I figure I might as well mention it again. I am figuring out exactly how I'm going to implement a team league starting next ECQ system as soon as we get it. I will finalize the details. There's going to be a prize pool. I will also accept donations to add to the prize pool. But yeah, definitely look forward to that as soon as we get the ECQ news. Once we know what organized play is going to look like next year, I'll try to put the information out for this fantasy team league. I don't know if it's even a fantasy team league. It's just like a team league that's not head-to-head and tied to ECQ results. But yeah, that should be a lot of fun. So stay tuned. Yeah.
Fantasy team league or not fantasy, kind of fantasy team league, fantasy ECQ league. I don't know. Either way, should be a good time, and I'm looking forward to it as well because it's always fun to do sorts of things like that. But now we also have the stats page, which is exciting to try to match the stats page up with some sort of event that can benefit from having the stats page. That'll be fun too. But in other news, in actual Eternal gameplay news, there's a new set coming out called Buried. That's you pronounce words. I can pronounce things, Sonny. I've been alive for a number of years. Buried Memories. Look, mispronouncing things is my fort, Sonny, okay? It's my fort.
Good one. You've clearly spent too much time in quarantine and away from other human beings.
Okay, so Buried Memories. I'm going to ignore that. Buried Memories is coming out in a couple weeks on Thursday, February 11th, and there's some sort of lore attached to it. Normally, I'm a big lore junkie, but this time I do not necessarily know what the lore is. It's like they have to go investigate the past to find out why the beacon's going to die or something, probably. I don't know. Either way, it's a new mini set. It's not a large set. It's a small set. So I think it's going to be, somewhere around mid-20s cards, 22, 23 cards.
I think I remember seeing 22.
Yeah, 22 new cards. Yep. And currently we have 4 new spoilers, so there'll be 18 more cards after this. We have a site, a unit, a cursed relic, and a power. So, Sonny, would you like to start off by telling us what the new site does?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Inferno Den is a 5-fire site. It's the first mono fire site, and, as someone who's played a lot of mono fire, this is something that I've been keeping my eye out for a long time. Your units have charge. Erica's agenda bottoms up, Inferno Dance, and Conflagrate. Erica, she's like a 6/6 or a 7/6.
She's a 6/5 flyer 6 cost, doesn't matter. She's a 6/5 flyer, the Valkyrie, that says when Erica attacks, all your units double their power. And this thing has charge, so Erica can attack immediately.
Yeah, so, it's pretty notable that, it gives your units charge. Of course, Erica can come out, but also Inferno Dance can potentially make a few units that can immediately attack. Like, I could see a gameplay pattern where you play Inferno Den, you can Conflagrate one of their units, then you play Inferno Dance and amplify it a bunch of times, and you get to attack for 6 or maybe even 10 with your units. And then you bottoms up, hit them really hard, or at least try to hit them, and then Erica comes down and attacks for 6 and buffs your other units.
Well, more than 6.
Yeah, hopefully you have other units to buff. But, it puts a lot of pressure on the opponent, even though I think, on their own, these cards are not necessarily that impressive. Charge just totally changes the equation. It's just a very dangerous keyword. What can I say? It's interesting to note that the 2 cards aside from Conflagrate don't really do a ton unless you amplify them. This card just seems to me like it's a control deck's nightmare, but boy, if you're not the absolute most aggressively slanted deck, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble trying to make this work, because it can get attacked down pretty easily past the Conflagrate, and it doesn't play defense and doesn't play to the board that well. It just puts on a lot of pressure.
Yeah, this card is extremely interesting to me. I know it's actually a very contentious card already, where some people think it's poop and some people think it's not poop. So the interesting notes is that, all the cards have Amplify, which is, I guess, the unifying factor to this. Why we have Conflagrate here instead of another burn spell, potentially. Bottoms Up also, again, has Amplify. Inferno Dance has Amplify. You can't actually ever use you can. Okay, you can slightly. If you attack first and then play Inferno Dance as the first spell off Inferno Den, you can. But normally, you can't defend the site with the Inferno Dance card. So unlike Tower, which plays 2 Valkyries, with Stire's Beckoning, I believe is the card, Inferno Den does not defend itself quite as well, but it does have a removal spell, which does make it very powerful. Compare it to Praxis Arcanum and being Praxis Arcanum also gives your units charge. Well, this thing actually does things, where Conflagrate is single-handedly better than all of Praxis Arcanum's, agenda combined. And, having Inferno Dance also having unit duration is also quite powerful. You can sort of say Genetor Deals is a similar thing, but I would say this thing, more so than Genetor Deals, is the first site that really wins the game on the spot if it pops, because presumably if it goes off, you have a unit in play or a unit in hand, and then you can play your unit in hand because everything has charge still, or the unit's in play, Erica will double their attack, and you can just win the game on the spot. So this one has the most threat out of every site I've seen. Its major downsides is that it doesn't defend itself quite as well as other sites, because 5 cost for a torch is not necessarily going to defend it quite as well as you might like, but it does also have 4 health, which is actually a surprising amount of health. Now, notably, charge means that you're not going to be holding back units to defend it, but hopefully you can be pressuring your opponent enough that they can't just hold back enough units to try to kill the site. Otherwise, they might, die, because you can play a second Inferno Den, or you can just, kill them with units. The thing that might be the thing keeping this thing down the most is the speaking circle. Yes, the bane of expedition is the speaking circle. 6 costs, so it doesn't actually cost all that much more than this site. And you play speaking circle and you immediately kill Inferno Den and you get a removal spell, you get some life steal, and you start to take over the game. So speaking circle is a very, very good card. I think it's still a fun card, but its passive is perhaps not the most fun passive in the world. So maybe Speed Circle is the only thing keeping this card from taking over Expeditions. We'll see if this card can rise above the Speaking Circle to dominate Expedition, or if it will be lowly and weak.
I mean, Speaking Circle is a huge concern. I think this card, like, it really depends on what the metagame looks like. If you have a bunch of decks that are, like, lots of slow removal, lots of sweepers, this deck absolutely tears that to shreds. But in the face of Speaking Circle, it can be problematic. If you're playing this card, you want it to be like the last card in your hand, or like the second to last card in your hand. You want to throw everything at your opponent and then play an Inferno Den to diversify your threats. And if you can do that, I think that works pretty well.
In some sense, I wonder if this card might be better in Throne, where there are less speaking circles and there are more decks where this card might be just, really good against you. Like, imagine playing this versus, a unitless deck, right? Like, we saw at Worlds where Lights Out Ace had to play Savage Incursion and Snowball to kill something. That's not going to happen every game. That's not going to happen most games. Having to have the 2 specific cards in your deck and like the one from your market you had to pull out and you had to hold on to kill this site might be something that's good in the market potentially. So we'll see. Maybe this card's better in Throne than Expedition.
Yeah, I was actually going to get to that, but I don't know. Like, it's kind of below rate for Throne, honestly. And in Expedition, I just feel like the format's probably too hostile to it. There's just too many units running around.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like it might not be in a good place, but like the power level is there on this card. It just needs the right spot, and it can really shine. All right, let's talk about the next one. This is basically Initiative Sands 2.0. Logistics Expert. It's a 1-cost time card. It's a 0/1 Overwhelm, which seems kind of silly, but makes sense once you read the rest of the card. +1 maximum power, amplify 4, +4/+4. So it's basically Initiative Sands that you can play for 5 as a 4/5 Overwhelm, or potentially for 9 as a 8/9 Overwhelm. I mean, this card's good. Initiative Sands is a scary start, but it lacks any sort of redundancy, and that has, kept Initiative Sands decks down. You could see a resurgence of decks that, want that effect, whether it be, the return of Praxis tokens, or just, some sort of deck that's trying to get out ahead of the opponent.
Yeah, notably, the one thing Sunny did not mention about this card is that it is also a soldier. So that means that it has some soldier synergies. Soldiers also already like to amplify, so it has synergy with soldiers in a number of ways, where it's a soldier for the unit type for any soldier buffing effect. But also, if you're playing an amplified deck, a soldier amplified deck specifically, then having extra maximum power means that you can amplify more or amplify sooner. So it's got a number of axes that is beneficial to a soldier deck. I think people are looking at this card entirely incorrectly. At least the main sentiment I've seen about this card is that it's just a strictly better Initiative of the Sands. It's just kind of replace Initiative of the Sands. And I'm like, no, it's going to be played with Initiative of the Sands.
Yeah.
One thing I've harped up on a bunch in my time is I want to have a critical mass of anything in my deck archetypes. That's why, like with the Janitor, it's very explicitly you need to have enough hits for me to want to play it. And the fact that you now have 8 copies of the 1-cost unit that produces maximum power is a really, really big deal. Obviously, Expedition, you can't play both, but in Throne, unless you're really playing a very specific soldier deck, I can't imagine playing one without the other.
Yeah, no kidding. If you're playing an Initiative Sands deck, it's the best thing you can play on turn 1 by so much. And doubling the amount of copies you have for that powerful turn 1 play, that is a huge deal. And one thing I just realized is that this could also mean more Aurelian Suppliers, and that's like my least favorite card, so I'm not happy about that.
That is true. This card is going to be very good with Aurelian Supplier and some sort of like Praxis token / aggro deck. I will say that in a deck like that, I do think Initiative Sands might be slightly better, because being a 1/1 early is better than being a 4/5 later in the game, especially if you're playing, Obelisk or any sort of board pump. I think that people do underestimate the power of, being able to actually attack. That being said, I don't think there's that much of a difference, obviously, especially this card is probably overall slightly better, but I do think people are, underestimating the power of just having the extra 1 power early in the game.
Yeah, you can also potentially trade with like a Champion of Fury or something like that if you need to.
Yeah. So the next card is the Cursed Relic. It's maybe kind of replaceable. We'll see what you guys think, and we'll see what me and Sunny also think. It is 4 Shadow, Smuggler's Toll, Cursed Relic. When you take damage on your turn, deal 3 damage to the cursed player. So first off the bat, it's a Cursed Relic. That means transpose Space Aegis, immediately cancel it out. Cursed Relics are in a rough spot right now.
Yes. I looked at this card and I was like, is there something you can do with like Dizo's Racket or something with this? And I thought through it and I was like, that requires way too much setup. It's kind of interesting. What are the best cards to pair with this? Like Bloodseeker does some good work. Impending Doom is just going to cost too much.
Have you heard of a power cycle called Vows?
All right, so your vows do 3 damage now. That's kind of interesting. I mean,
is it good? I don't know.
This is expensive. Like, well, you said it. Like, it costs 4, and it can be countered with Transpose, which is a relatively common market card. Now, there is that 2-drop Mandrake that prevents people from getting Aegises, which is a big deal, and the like easiest way to protect against this. But like, I don't think that can be consistent enough.
You know, let's put this with Smuggler Stash. Every turn you deal 2 damage to yourself, and then 3 damage to the opponent.
Oh, you mean in the workshop, Deez's workshop? Is that what it's called? The site.
No. I'm thinking of Junkyard. Wyatt's Junkyard.
Wyatt's Junkyard. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I think we both got that wrong. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. I knew what you were talking about. But
yeah. So, but the awkward thing about this card, aside from maybe Vows, but the problem with Wyatt's Junkyard is that 2 damage every turn does eventually add up. Also, wait, the 2-cost relic that gives you bonus power, and then you take damage again in your turn.
But these are just like once per turn. I think you need a way to just like pile on the damage after you land this.
But of course, the problem is if you're stacking up these self-damage effects, one, you might not draw Smuggler's Toll, so we really need, again, some sort of secondary, or tertiary. If we can have 8 effects that, give you benefits off you taking damage on your turn, that's really when this sort of self-damage deck might shine. But the problem is with the self-damage deck is that you're dealing damage to yourself, and if all your cards deal damage to yourself, that can really add up, and your opponent can just kill you, especially if they're maybe playing Mono Fire with Yeti Cookmasters. You can just die if you deal yourself 10 damage.
Okay, I've been thinking about this. There could be some sort of shrine deck that likes this, or something that has like Argenport, Instigator, and then plus a bunch of sacrifice effects, right? Like that seems a way to shotgun someone pretty quickly. Like you have a board, you play this, you play Carver or something, you play another Carver, and then you play Strange Burglar. Like I could see this doing a lot of damage to yourself.
I mean, the problem is that it's a 4-cost relic that does nothing when you play. If it costs 3, I could see like Direwolf loves these 4-cost synergy relics. And then, 3 sets later gives us a second piece to it that makes the deck actually become like maybe somewhat of a viable tier 3 deck. But like by itself as the only way to benefit from dealing damage to yourself, it's just rough.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that.
I think the only other card that benefits off you dealing damage to yourself is Wyatt off of Wyatt's Junkyard.
Yeah, but like what I'm saying is the damage adds up quickly. And if you have a way to do it multiple times a turn, you can potentially kill someone very quickly. You play this and then you kill them, right?
If you're a very weird Stone Scar aggro deck, you're playing like 12 Vows and you're playing Bloodseeker, I guess it's not the worst idea in the world. It's an odd card because I want to hate it. Like I want to think like this card is just complete garbage. And it probably is complete garbage, but like there's something to it that makes it possibly not complete garbage, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't think it's going to appear in a tier 1 deck, at least not initially, unless there's something really busted that can happen with it. But like, I do think it can end some lives,
If Daryl ever prints a second or a third effect that lets us benefit the damage ourselves, I think this card could come back with a vengeance. But until then, I'm gonna relegate it to meme status.
Oh, you know what?
What?
Isn't this like the ultimate counter to Dick Rose Ruin? Does Dick Rose Ruin hit you every time you draw a card?
Yes! You play this, and then your opponent plays Dishiro's Ruin. Oh, that's what this card's for. This card is your market counter to their market Dishiro's Ruin. So they play a Dishiro's Ruin. You play this. You play Wisdom of the Elders. They take 6 damage. I love it. I'm in. I love this card. Okay, changed my mind. This card's the best card ever. Stop playing Dishrow's Ruin. The card is unplayable. I don't know why it sees play on ladder. Anyways, moving on. So the final card being spoiled, I think, is somewhat underrated. So to remind you of a different card called Ancient Manual, which is a card that is complete and utter trash. This card is called House Alliance, and its art is a table with dots on it. How exciting! But it is a power, and it says gain an influence in a faction you don't have, and it's depleted unless you already have one of each faction. If you do, gain an influence of your choice. So it's an Ancient Manual until you have all 5 influence. Then it's just gain any influence you want. Then it becomes just the one of the best power ever. Just undepleted, gain whatever influence you want. So not the greatest card ever, and then it becomes one of the greatest power ever. Sunny, what do you think of House Alliance?
Well, first of all, while we're talking about the art looks like a 3D render from the 90s or something.
Oh my god, yes, yes. Oh my god, it's just like the worst. It's like it's awful art. Isn't it just like one of the worst arts that Turtles had in a while, especially on power. Like normally the powers aren't like the most exciting art, but like they're like interesting, like symbols, or like here's a piece of parchment that's like at least cool, like in a scribe-ish kind of way. But this art just looks kind of bad to me.
Yeah, this reminds me of RuneScape when they first went 3D or something.
Oh my goodness, it does. It's like a RuneScape table. Do you want to go level up your crafting here? Do you want to go sell your random items you got off your mobs to the bartender?
Yeah, okay. So I mean, powers that don't generate 2 influence, I think just generally aren't very good. Like unless powers that only produce power, so not like emblems or something, or like tactics that transform into some sort of effect, non-power effect, that only produce 1 power, I just generally think are really not good. So especially since it becomes depleted, and then it still only produces 1 influence after that, I think we're just in a state where your power really needs to produce 2 influence to be useful.
It would definitely be too powerful if it just gave you 1 influence in any faction without being depleted. But that's kind of what the card needed.
It would be way better than any similar effect that we have right now, but I'm not sure it would be actually that insane. I think if you just have a power that is always undepleted and says gain 1 influence of whatever type you want, I don't think that card's even good.
Well, that's not what this card is. That card thing would be Ancient Manual, but not depleted, right? Where it has to be a faction you don't have.
Yeah, I don't think that would be good anyway.
You can't get double influence. You can't say get up to Jack influence. You have to be building a deck that's a very battery style deck.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for batteries, this comes into play depleted, so you're not really playing this with your 1-drops.
My point for evaluating power stands. I just don't think that you can afford to have powers that only give you 1 influence, like especially if they're depleted. But like if they're not a Waystone or an emblem, I just don't think you can afford to have something that only gives you 1 influence. We're just past that point.
Yeah, I mean, think of cards like the 1 cost unit that becomes a 3/3 if you have 1 of each influence, and then it gets super swole if you have 3 of each influence. The problem is that while this card might look good for an archetype like that, the problem is that you get to the first one potentially a little bit sooner. Even then, you might not. The problem is that if you have 4 of these in your deck, you're probably not getting to the final mode, which is if you're trying to play for that mode, you really want to play for that mode. So being depleted, I think, really, really makes the card not good enough.
Well, I don't think it would be good enough without that.
I think it would. I think it would just be insane without that, but that's okay.
Well, we'll have to figure that out on a different day. All right, soon. News soon. Okay, so there was a Reddit post. I guess it was yesterday at this point. Today's the 30th, so I guess this would be on Friday the 29th by Reddit user Combiboinis.
Sure, that sounds about right.
2021 OP plans is the title. Any timelay / ETA for an announcement. Gato Sujo from the Misplay podcast responds crickets and gets 3 upvotes, and then immediately gets ratioed by Scarlatch DWD, who says, news soon, ! 16 upvotes at the time of this screenshot. Anyway, so aside from petty, internet measuring contests, that's exciting. I don't think that Scarletch would say news soon if it was going to be disappointing. So
news soon, we're canceling Eternal.
Yeah, that would burn a lot of bridges really quickly, and I think they want to the Eternal player base to bleed into the board games they make. I've actually heard people talking about the Dune board game and how they really like it. So
If
that's
Direwolf
cool.
was canceling Eternal, they wouldn't pull a move like that because they'd alienate most of their player base from even buying their other products or anything if they were to make a move like that, like the most troll move ever. So I'm gonna say this is again a good sign. I'll just mention what Sunny posted in when he was talking to me on Discord. He said, we should be on standby for whenever Scarlatch refers to drops, and I respond with, hey, it could be today, it could be Monday, it could be 3 weeks from now. I've never trusted a soon before in my life. And I stand by those words. Never trust the word soon. You never know when soon means. If you ever participate in the Blizzard community with any game, you will know that soon stands for soon or otherwise never. So I'm hopeful, but I have no idea when that could possibly happen. But when it does, you can be sure that me and Sunny will talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. What's funny is I think I messaged you. You were offline yesterday, but I messaged you like a few hours before this was posted about like if you want to record something. And had we actually recorded, this would have happened like during our recording session. We would have had a news flash as we so often do on this
No,
cast.
that would have been great. Now I'm disappointed.
Well, we're recording this on a Saturday evening, so they can't pull like a huge announcement on us like they have so many times before.
Thank goodness. It is funny the amount of times it's like interruption. We have a new announcement. Clearly, we need to record on like Tuesday afternoons because that I think is when Daryl loves to announce things.
Yeah, I just got a DM from Collector. Let me read through it. Yeah. So my guess what this means is that with the release of the new set, the mini set, they're going to have some organized play, something or other.
That makes sense.
That seems to be their MO, right? Like they make their announcements about tournaments and whatnot, usually with the release of sets. So that's what I'm expecting. And if that happens, well, we'll talk about it as soon as we learn more of it, of course.
So they announced the 2020 World Season on October 7th, 2019. When was the last set before that? Looks like right after Flames of Zolta was released, that's when they announced Eternal 2020 Worlds, or right around like a week after. But yeah, I think Sunny's on the ball with this one that they wanted to announce the next competitive season with the release of another set of cards being added to the game.
Yeah, and with a new competitive season will come the Friends of Eternal Fantasy League, the Friends of Eternal Team League. I don't know what I'm calling it. I guess that's it, Friends of Eternal Team League, although like Friends of Eternal is participating in it as well as running it. I don't know. In any case, lots of great things will happen if we actually do get an announcement. Until then, we're just in the dark and speculating. I think that about wraps it up for today. Anything else you'd like to share with our listeners, Stormblessed?
No, I think I'm okay. I think everything's going well, and I hope that everyone continues having a good time inside or outside of Eternal.
I do have one more thing. I've recently been getting some compliments on my Friends of Eternal hoodie.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if you can still buy them from Inked Gaming because I think something happened with that, but maybe I should make those available again. I don't expect very many to go out in circulation, but shout out to the artist Van Lau who did the Friends of Eternal logo. I couldn't have asked for a better piece. What can I say? Anyway, that's beside the point. Thanks y'all for listening. We'll be back either when we get some news or when the new set drops, probably. I think one of those two will be our next episode, if not both. Until then, credits. Thank you so much to our editor, SRFS, for putting together all of these episodes. And also a huge thank you to our patrons at Patreon. We have Pereben, Cotillion, Work Done Son, Chamomile, Chrissier, D-Dub, and Yeastout, who continue to support FECast through thick and thin, and we love these people very much.
Big, huge thumbs up to our patrons, and also, big shout out to SRFS for also being heavily involved in the Eternal community. They are also the tournament organizer behind Tuesday Night Eternal and the Team League showcase. So big shout out to them as well for doing a lot of work for other Eternal content.
Yeah, 4 more tournaments in Tuesday Night Eternal, right?
Yep, and then the invitational event, which all should be fun.
All right, great. Good luck, everyone. Until next time, we'll see you in the friend zone. The Friends of Eternal Discord is the best place on the internet to get better at Eternal. We have players of all skill and experience levels all happy to help each other out on basically any aspect of their Eternal gameplay. And making all this possible is our generous patrons over at patreon.com. If you'd like to support FECast or Friends of Eternal, consider donating at patreon.com/Friends of Eternal. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, we'll see you in the friend zone. New set announcement. I need to get in the zone.